All right, everybody, I'm really excited. Today I'm here with my good friend, Louie. I don't even know your last name.
Michael.
Louie Michael, because I always just call you Louie. So my good friend, Louie Michael, who is a police officer in San Diego in El Cajon County, I guess. El Cajon, California. But I've known Louie for many years now in my work with the Iraqi community in San Diego and around the world, obviously. And so I just really wanted to be able to introduce him to the people following the show to better understand not only Louie's experience as a Chaldean and an Iraqi refugee here in America, but as a police officer, because I feel like you could be so misunderstood on both sides.
Yeah.
And I feel like so as somebody in the religious freedom space, you have such a unique perspective for people to hear in having those two different perspectives. I think that this whole platform is really to help people think outside the box and to not get pigeonholed into, oh, I see a certain person in a certain way. And so often when you deal with religious freedom, people are either afraid of it and they think, no, religious freedom is a human right, that those religious people are pushing their ideas on us, or they think it's a right for me, but for no one else. And so I love, what you do and haven't gotten to know your story. And I think this would be a great story to share. So obviously this is very comfortable and just, so the first thing I want to just thank you for being here, Louie.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. But I would love for Louie just to share a little bit about how he came to America. And I mean, obviously we'll get into how you ended up to be a police officer too, but let's start a long time ago. I don't know what year it was, but when did you come and how did that happen? And give us a little perspective on what happened in Iraq that led you here.
So I was one of five now. We were four, and then my sister was born here after we got to the U.S. But my oldest is a brother, and I was the youngest. And my dad was in the military for approximately 12 years under Iraqi. Yeah, for about 12 years. Under
Saddam.
Yes.
Wow.
And so that was obviously
hard.
That's how it is. Like, that's part of the country, and you had no, direction other than you assimilate with what is given to you. And it was to the point where my dad figured, when my sons get older, there's only one choice, and that was the military. And clearly, being Christians in Iraq is not something that is a high number. I mean, you're dominated by
you don't have the choice.
Absolutely. They're a small percentage.
And I'm sure your dad saw what was happening under Saddam, was terrified,
right. And
you had no freedom to ever dissent or to question anything within that society. I don't think people really understand the amount of I was actually talking to somebody recently that was from Morocco, and she said that a little girl in a classroom that she knew about had questioned why she couldn't have a birthday party or why they were celebrating Saddam's birthday. It had something to do with it. It's just an innocent question. And the next day, her and her whole family were disappeared. So
it's real. I mean, unless you experience that,
right.
You really don't know.
Yeah.
And it came to the point where my dad said it's time to leave, and we fled from Iraq. We walked out of Iraq into a refugee camp in Turkey.
So how many miles was that, and how old were you?
I know I was 5 for sure, and I know we walked through the mountains into Turkey. And when we got there, they basically said, you're not Turkish. What are you doing here? And they put us in a refugee camp specifically for people that are coming from another country.
Was that in the 70s or 80s?
90s.
90s. Wow.
So 93.
So that was right after Persian Gulf, right?
Yep. So those was kind of our escape route.
Wow.
Once that happened. We were able to stay in a refugee camp for 3 years under, obviously, with a tent, and not like a tent that you go to, camping and hanging out with family. It was a legit tent, and it was me and my 3 other siblings in a little tent until they were able to put us in another 1-bedroom complex for all of us. And so that was the start of our new life and beginning of a new
You had
adventure.
no idea what was going to happen.
Absolutely not.
I can't imagine. My little girl is 6, so you can only imagine how terrified.
It was kind of surreal. We left everything behind, and you really didn't have a choice other than going forward and not going back, because you knew you couldn't come back.
Right. At that point, there's no turning back.
And you knew if your father, they found out he was, AWOL from the Iraqi military, then you're
dead.
Yeah. And so it made it very surreal, and it almost made it feel like this is really happening, but there's no control over it. We just have to go with it and hope for the best.
Yeah.
So that happened, and we were there for about 3 years, and we got pretty much lucky to get accepted into the U.S. And so we came here right after that. And
that's amazing.
like to even call, Iraq home, it wasn't home. Like I truly believe America's home to me because that's who gave me an opportunity to welcome me in without even looking at where I'm from and who I am and what color I am. And so that was inspirational for us to continue, right, to be part of this country and give back to the best of our ability because they gave us a chance. And so that was the beginning of our life. And, we all were in school. We're all young, clearly. We didn't have, any knowledge. I didn't speak English. It was the only thing I knew was hi and bye. And I'm sure I got, a couple words that were thrown at me that were not hi and bye.
And you probably started kindergarten. So you start kindergarten in first grade?
I started in fourth grade.
Oh my gosh.
And I started at Lexington Elementary as a fourth grader. So I really missed the whole beginning of understanding.
Oh, wow. All the language.
Absolutely.
So you really understand these kids that have come recently and have struggling with like
100%.
All the cultural issues, all of the language issues that feel like a fish out of water.
And they come with traumatic,
serious
issues,
trauma.
And to have them say, oh, you'll be fine, assimilate, you'll be good. It doesn't work like that.
Or just push it down, shove it down, which is often what happens, and just ignore it, just pretend like you're American now. But you still deal with all that, the fear and the trauma. And
so I went to a local elementary school at fourth grade, and then I was able to go to a middle school, which
were you in San Diego then?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you guys moved right here. And was there a larger Iraqi community here?
We started in Riverside, but we were only there for a short period of time because we realized our largest Chaldean community was out here in San Diego, and we decided just to come over. Like it's
a huge community.
And so we reached out to our friends and family that were associated by contact but not lived here, and the church helped us out by finding a place and being part of that new establishment. But it was different. I can tell you that you're coming into a new country. You don't know the laws, the rules, what is expected of you, and you're basically just trying to understand it and grasp as much as you can and make the best of what you got. So that was challenging, but at the same time, there was a positive approach from my parents to continue reinforcing this is home and do what you can to understand and learn and help make knowledge of what's going on so that you're not out there by yourself and you're not out there stuck out there with nothing to help you with. So it really starts at home now. I mean, if my parents were we still love Iraq and we're very devoted, to that country, I don't think we would have been successful of embracing and assimilating to this country. I think it has to do with a lot of that.
Well, and they were older. I mean, they had lived in Iraq their whole lives and had to give that up, and then came here and just said, we're adapting to this culture. We're taking it on, and this is where we found freedom. And so that was.
It was amazing to be part of that. Like, and to start off with something that you didn't know what was going to take. You knew that there was opportunities. You knew that there wasn't going to be anybody, telling you can't do something. It's up to you on how far you want to take it. It's so
true, isn't it? I think that's the amazing thing about America is it's like the world is your oyster. What do you want to do with it?
Right.
And
they told us, like they said, hey, this is a melting pot. And I always look at it and go, I don't think it's a melting pot anymore. I think it's a salad bowl. Like I want my salad with cucumbers and olives.
Like you're a little different. You still have your Chaldean roots. You still like your food. You still
absolutely.
But you still.
But
American.
I understand that I'm a Chaldean American now. I'm not going to say I'm an Iraqi. I was born there. I'm not going to forget where I came from. But this is my home, and if I don't appreciate what it provides to me, then I don't think it's fair to understand that there's a different view of it for me. Because I'm obviously a police officer now, so there's a different perspective that comes into play.
So what was the expectation of your family? Ready to go to college, get a career. What was the expectation in your family or in your community? What are you supposed to do, Louie?
It's weird, but like every family, every culture has what they want their kids to be: a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, right? That's so like cliche, but it's so true. Like the stereotypical from any other country that I've talked to, they're like, if you're not a doctor, you're not a lawyer, you're not an engineer, you're not doing something right with your life. And so
that was the expectation for you.
Oh yeah.
You had the three things. And you're like, that's what
and that's what they wanted like us to push for. And it's like, that's not for me. Like I don't mind going to school and putting myself out there to learn and give myself a better understanding of what life is all about. But that's not the career path I want. So I chose not to do that. So that was a little bit of a hard pill for my mom and dad to swallow. And they looked back and said, you sure you made the right decision by doing what you're doing now?
Were you adamant even then that you wanted to be a police officer? What was the motivation behind that?
it's a funny story, but it's still real and
Yeah.
alive. I lived on a street called Burnham, which is in El Cajon. I still remember it like it was yesterday. I used to ride my bicycle down the street. My neighbor was an El Cajon cop,
Uh-huh.
and he would drive his vehicle home,
Mhm.
and he had kids as well, and they played basketball and rode our bikes with each other. But he would come during his lunchtime to hang out with them.
Oh.
And I'm like, this is super cool. Like this guy's, one, he's a cop. Two, he's giving, serving the community. And three, he's a family guy. Like this
He's like around his family all the time.
I'm like, this is a superhero to me, right? Because at the day he's working and saving lives, and at night he's at home and protecting. You know what I mean? So it was that inspiration to say that you could do it. So I kind of was bugging him. I was that kid that would stand by his car until he came out. Yeah, because I was so intrigued by it. I mean, I didn't remember law enforcement back home because I was young, but I would only hear stories, and I'd be like, that's not here, because they're waving at me.
They're so different. And your dad's experience, even being in the military, 100%. Which I'm sure you heard stories of, you're afraid of them. But here it's totally different.
Culture shock.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's like they were so normal. Like they were just people,
part of the community,
and giving back, and they were just doing their thing with what they got. And so it made it seem like I didn't even want to hear about what happened over there. Yeah. Because it didn't mean anything to me. Like I was already driven.
You're a little American kid at that point. So
100%. I was that switch was, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to do everything I can to be part of that. Mm-hmm. And so I followed his footsteps. I waited until I was at least, 20 and a half to put in for the police academy. Yeah. And I put myself through because they were hiring at the time.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go through Grossmont, police academy and do that. And then when they open up the level 1 academy, I'll do that. And then so
you just kept going up the ladder until you could get in.
I did not. I was bugging them. I would put in more hours during the week.
Persistence. People don't know if you want a job, you just got to keep knocking on that door.
Right. And they don't understand. Like, they'll give it to you. I mean, you're going to be, you're bugging, but don't open the door for you.
But you want people that want to be passionate about what they want to do too.
Absolutely.
You don't want somebody that's just like, yeah.
It's not a job for me. Like, no. I don't think it's
a calling.
Yeah, 100%.
Clearly,
and if it wasn't, I would be doing it.
Right.
But it was the neighbor that made me like remember, like, hey, you could do this. Like, and I can help you get there if you need me. Mm-hmm. And I still talk to the guy.
Oh, that's so cool.
We still know the family. We're good friends. And so it's weird me being that kid on a bike. Yeah. And then when I got hired and they pinned my badge, I'm standing next to him. He's like, man, these are.
I bet that was really emotional.
Very emotional.
It's like another father too.
It is. And I looked up to him as a role model because clearly I didn't have anybody else to look up to from the
career.
Absolutely. Yeah. But my parents obviously were my backbone of getting where I wanted to be. But the support was there. I think my dad was more proud than my mom, of course, being a mom. She was super afraid and would hide my gun belt during academy days. And it's like, Mom, I need to go. I'm like, can you go get it? I'm not going to stop going to the academy because
that's so funny.
You're worried as a mom. But that's what gave me, that.
Was that fear of hers because of her experience in Iraq? Or
I think it has to do with both.
Yeah.
There's only me and another brother, right? So we don't have multiple brothers.
You need the man in the family.
And so that's the cultural thing, right?
Yeah.
And so her thing was, okay, I know that I can't change what you're doing, but I'm always still going to be your mom, and I'm still going to be worried about you. Yeah. And I go, I respect that, but I also I'm doing this. Clearly, it's a job. Like I got to go to work. That's what makes me, happy. And
you're protecting the community too. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing people don't understand. I mean, police are essential to the community. Right. They are the eyes and the ears and the backbone and the safety for, our communities. I mean, I remember when I was in junior high and, not always doing what I probably should have, but there was always a police officer on our campus. He knew all of us. He knew if we were going in the right direction or the wrong direction. Right. And he kept us on the straight and narrow. And thank God for him, because, you need that kind of a person in your community, because unfortunately, there's so many things that can just, there's just so many things coming at our kids these days that you need someone that really does understand all those dynamics and that can say, okay, there's something going on here, and be able to see it in a way that the parents or the teachers maybe don't, and navigate that. And you can do it in a special way because you are here in the Chaldean community, and you can get the police department a whole nother perspective that they don't have. So tell me a little bit about what it's been like as a police officer and how you've brought that perspective in.
It's been amazing. I've been on for almost 13 years now.
Okay.
I got to work some pretty cool assignments from, the bike team to the community relations side to being a detective to recently being promoted to going back on the streets and giving back and doing a mentorship program. But it's been awesome because the department has never had a Chaldean officer.
So were you the first one?
Yeah.
You were the first Chaldean officer here in San Diego.
Not in San Diego, in El Cajon.
And El Cajon,
Yeah.
where there's like a huge
So we
community of
were at
Iraqis.
60,000. It's second largest outside of Detroit.
Wow.
So we were,
Iraqi population, and you were the first one. Well, this is huge because what we're seeing all over the news now is you need people with those different perspectives to understand the community, be able to speak into the community, to know what's going on, to provide that. So tell me.
it was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I got hired in 08. I pushed a black and white, which is police car as a patrol, responding to calls and stuff. But it was not until you responded to calls where you could really understand what was going on. You respond to a call where there's no barrier. They're talking to somebody in their native tongue, but they also understand that we're there for a reason. We're not just showing up in the middle of the night and taking their family and going away because that's their perspective from overseas. But that we're there to help.
So you're able to mitigate those fears
100%.
immediately, which is huge because I think that's the benefit that somebody with a cultural perspective can bring in. They're not gonna.
And you'll have like our community being so close in space. They don't understand the social distancing aspect. They are in your they're in your bubble,
business.
and that's just how culturally we are. And so it would be weird when they'd come up and try to hug me and try to, and the officer's like, hey, you can't do that. Like that's and it's like it's okay. He's not a threat. Because cultural sensitivity is they don't know that.
You have to kiss on both cheeks
100%.
when you see him, and it's like,
well, I don't.
You don't take the baklava, like there's something wrong with you.
Absolutely. And I'm telling you, like when officers go up to their houses,
you got to
you're
take
going to
the
go
tea.
there, you're going to eat, you're going to feed you, and then you're going to be like going, I came here for a radio call and I left here super full and I need somebody to help me get
My wife's going to want to know why I'm not hungry for dinner.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't take it with you,
you
that's
have
an
to.
insult.
It's rude.
Yeah.
You have to.
And so those are like some of the fun things that we did, but there was also challenging parts of it, and having officers within our department who were, I wouldn't say not understanding of the community. I don't think they knew how to deal with them.
But they didn't know what they didn't know, maybe.
Absolutely.
I mean, we see that all the time. And it's not willful ignorance or like intentional. It's just, I mean.
They knew they were there. They knew we were going to respond to calls. I don't think they wanted to do something to offend them.
Yeah.
So they would.
And they didn't know how to react.
Absolutely.
So they just overcompensated by just not.
Right. And then they would say, okay, well, we'll use a translator. Right. And that translator sometimes was not the best translator, but they didn't know any better.
Because most people don't understand there's many dialects of Arabic or of not just Arabic, but of Aramaic.
Right.
And you speak both languages, right?
I do.
So, I mean, two totally different languages.
And then you have a different dynamic where if the person's really translating because they don't want to undermine what is really happening because they're trying to protect the
family, then they won't translate correctly.
Absolutely. So I ran into that a lot. When it was like,
wait a minute, you're not actually telling us the truth.
No. And so I would go literally because I don't have a last name that is Middle Eastern in nature where it would stand out. I would just respond to calls and I would listen and be like, that's not what happened. So just so you know, this is what happened and that's what, and then we would basically based on what I know and I heard that we would dictate what the result was going to be. Wow. So then we went from that aspect of it to officers not understanding cultural differences. Yeah. A Chaldean is a Christian. They're not going to wear a hijab.
They're not a Muslim.
They're not Muslim.
But most people think Chaldeans, they think, I mean, I talk to people that hear Yazidi and they're like, oh, they're Muslim too. It's like, no, actually, these are all very different cultures,
100%.
Religions. I mean, it's very distinct and have very distinct ways of doing things.
And we have that in our community. Yeah. So I did a cultural diversity training.
Oh, in the police unit.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I basically went up to the chief
and said, this was not like recently. This was when, like many years ago?
Probably in 2010 or 11.
So this is like, 11 years ago. Yeah. Pre all of the diversity, DEI stuff that we have going. So Louie was the original diversity.
And I only did that not to like.
It was needed.
Like to make them feel that they weren't really sensitive to our community, but that they really need to understand them before they can take action because it's not fair. I don't want to be the one that says you're that person based on what I know.
Well, it's uncomfortable for you too. I'm sure being in all those positions because they want you to be their friend, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
And then you've got to be professional, but you also need your other officers to understand the cultural dynamics so they can back you.
Right.
So it's really your brotherhood. I mean, you need to be on the same page.
100%. And I think it was a buy-in from the chief. And I think in any department, when you have buy-in from the top
That's great.
and it trickles down, right?
Yeah.
So I presented it. I said, hey, look,
You have a great chief here too, from what I
we
understand.
do. And
Yeah.
we have a new one that just came on a few
Yeah.
years ago, but he's on the same command
Yeah.
staff and is phenomenal. And so it made it easier for me to just say, hey, look, this is a need, right? I'm not saying that we have a problem. I think it's good to make our officers well-rounded, more understanding. So I gave them like legitimate things. You walk into a house, you see a rosary, you're going to know you're talking to a Chaldean family. It's not that you're talking to a Muslim family. If you walk in and there's a different color of a rug and a prayer rug, if there's beads, we don't use beads for prayer. They're Muslims. So it was legitimate stuff that they would see and go, got it. Like I saw that the other day and I was talking to somebody that was, and then I gave them.
So let's understand, like, let's say they're going into a situation and it's Ramadan or there's somebody, it's a prayer time. They just need to be sensitive to,
right.
There's certain things happening. You don't want to exacerbate a situation by stepping on a cultural sensitivity. That's just important anywhere you go.
And you look at like something that seems so odd that law enforcement responds to a death call, right? We do.
Yeah.
That's what we do. And for the community, they're really shocked that law enforcement is there. Why is police in my house reference a person that just lost their life? So we would.
There's no understanding of that. Like it's normal. You have to issue a death certificate, right?
We legitimately had fights with family members over them trying to kiss the body, hold the body, and grieve with it. And we couldn't let them do that because the investigation didn't dictate whether it was not natural causes or some foul play. But they didn't understand that. So we had legitimate conversations with, hey, we'll grab the leader of the family, the elder one that understands what was going on, and say, look, this is our job. The moment we can deem that it's safe, that you can be around it and do what you have to do, we'll let you do that. But in the meantime, you getting super excited and getting all emotional and fainting and stuff is really not going to help the situation. Right? I mean, and so it became we had a death call, we're responding 5-6 units. And we're trying to, solve the problem, but we're really part of the problem now because we're having this. And it's like, no, stop. Just give them a minute. Like they're just grieving. It's not really us against them.
Well, you're like you've obviously done this for the police department and your colleagues, but I'm sure you've had to do it for your own community too.
Oh, yeah.
So share with me some of those examples, because I'm sure that, there's a sense of like, I want you all to be better prepared to understand and to have a different perspective of the police as well. So
it's harder for the community, especially when the newcomers came in, of what the expectations
the more recent immigrants.
Yes. And I would say newcomers just because the ones that have been here over 5 years, they have legitimacy. And I'll tell you why I think that. The moment they get their citizenship, they truly feel they're part of this country.
Yeah.
And they don't feel like they're a guest. If they have a white card or a green card, they don't feel like they're still American. The moment they get that citizenship, they feel very excited about being part of this country, and they feel like they're not going to get removed. I'm telling you from stories.
There's just that fear, and it comes from, I'm sure, being in such an unsettled place as a refugee, that you're always looking for that sense of security,
and that's what they wait for. So the newer comers were expecting, like, law enforcement to be understanding and forgiving. So if they were driving a high rate of speed or running a stop sign, that they would just say, okay, don't do it again. And it's like, no, like there's laws, and those laws are meant to be, to be understood, and that we have to comply with them because this could cause this, and that.
Where they come from, it's just like, here's a little extra money, or I know so-and-so, or
and it became
there's no like definitive boundaries on anything, or, well, Saddam protected this class and this class isn't protected. And it's like,
and I would get those, hey, what would it take to get this problem to go away? And I'd be looking at them going, no, this doesn't work like that here. Like, we are legitimately doing our job, and you have to understand money is not going to solve your problem. And that's not that they were doing it maliciously
that's what they were used to.
That's the culture norm.
I go into certain countries and bribery is like the norm there. And it's so frustrating to work in that kind of an environment where, because it's so ingrained in a culture, they can't do anything but kind of live with it too.
Sure.
And it's just, it's very foreign to us.
So we talk about like traffic as being something minimal to domestic violence. That was another complete eye-opening for me, because I was dealing with legitimate domestic violence cases, and not just in the Chaldean community, in the Middle Eastern community as a whole. And it would be like, you have no business to tell me what I can do with my wife and how handle the situation at home because it's my wife, it's not your business. Or disciplining my kids. Well, if I don't discipline them, then they're going to go out there and they're going to be a problem for you. So if I don't be a father here, then you guys are, then what am I here for? And then there was that cultural imbalance because I'm like, I get what he's saying. I totally get it because that's how they were raised.
Right. And the family is essential,
100%.
but there are certain boundaries for what you can and can't do.
Right. And you would get those men that legitimately would tell me, you've just cut my legs underneath me. Like I have no standing ground right now. For you to come and tell me that this is not okay, that would be, it's a huge issue. And then you had cultural differences going into a Muslim house where you wouldn't talk to a female.
You could only talk to the male.
Absolutely. And that was something that we were like, we're police officers. We don't dictate who we talk to. It's the person that we called us or the person that we're responding to. But also understanding that they didn't know that law enforcement wasn't going to be, doing things to kind of make them feel uncomfortable, but understanding that this is what we're doing to help solve the problem. So I had that throughout my, 13 years, and it's getting better. And I think doing community outreach was a huge, positive perspective on, just school presentation.
So tell me about what the schools and what you've been doing in the schools.
So I was able to be part of a, go to the classroom and meet with the kids, have them come out and touch a police car, sit in the front seat of a police car. I don't push
know what it
radio.
is. And you're talking about the newcomers.
Yes.
Because they have no idea. They're not sensitive. They're afraid.
Right.
I mean, these are kids that literally fled for their lives when ISIS came in, right?
Absolutely.
So they might be Syrian refugees that fled when ISIS came in and the civil war started. So these are kids that are terrified, it
was hard because it took
and no one protected them.
No.
So they have no sense of.
The moment I spoke Arabic, I think it was the icebreaker for them. It was something like, wow, like you speak what we speak, but you're wearing this and that's not. They're like,
it totally changes their paradigm. It causes this dissonance. It's like, wait a minute.
And they're stimulated by the fact that this is something that they could do.
Yeah.
And I encourage that into our community and saying, because, it's very common for our community to see a police officer. And then when the kid's doing something not good and go, hey, if you don't do this, the police officer is going to take you. And I would walk up to them and say, no, do not tell them that. How would you?
All you do is scare them to not want to talk to the police officer.
I get you're trying to use some sort of a reinforcement on what the kid's doing, but that's not the way
where
to do
does the kid go if they get in trouble or if they're like afraid or they can't? I always tell my daughter, you need to find the police officer. You need to find like that person in the uniform.
Right.
They're the safe zone.
Yes. And so we'd have that conversation with mom and like, no. And I'd speak to him in Arabic or Aramaic and go, no, don't listen to them. Here's a sticker. Remember that I'm here to help you. And you would see a complete 180. So there was a lot of not understanding what we did out here.
A lot of sensitivity.
100%. And it's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of work.
You're coming here and expecting to understand the country, the rules and regulations and simulate and be like, okay, here you go. Good luck.
How hard was it with the newcomers that came in?
Very hard.
Because it was probably very different from past.
I think it was extremely hard because we had different variations of Middle Easterns. It wasn't just the Chaldeans, it was the Syrians, it was the Afghanis, the Palestinians. And so you had different types of communities. And we didn't really deal with a lot of the Somalis because they were in their own different community, but they integrated through our community as well because they stayed here for a little bit for placement. And then they went out to San Diego or some of the areas where they were commonly in. But we were having some issues even in the schools because we had family members that didn't want to bring the kids to school, that they didn't understand that they had to come to school, that's what, that's about.
I even heard stories. I don't remember if you were the one that even told me where some of the students refused to eat because the food was made by, people not of their faith. And so they said we can't eat that.
And that was hard.
And so the kids weren't eating.
No. And we had a time specifically during, Ramadan and fasting where they would say, well, we're not going to eat. And it's like, well, your kids are going to get dehydrated. Like they're not going to be able to function in school. And I get it. I mean, culturally, but the school district had to make some sort of an arrangement to fulfill those needs because we had an influx of Middle Easterns coming through that needed special attention. But I think having school districts along with law enforcement and community leaders come together makes a positive outcome because then it's not us against them, it's us coming together. To become one.
And to help them integrate into the community and have a safety net of we're all here in the same
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so there were some phenomenal times. We spent times playing basketball with the kids in uniform. We played dodgeball. We went,
Oh,
I mean, those were the fun days of,
yeah.
you really don't see the cop, you see the human behind
Yeah.
the badge. And that's who we are. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to say that all the cops are the same and they're all different, right? But you have to understand that you can't automatically say that they're all that, because that's not true.
Well, I think the biggest thing that I understand, having worked in so many countries around the world, but in particular in Iraq,
Right.
is that the idea of rule of law, of having a society based in the rule of law, where there are rules and there are kind of boundaries. And if let's say you speed, you get a ticket. There's a line to get into, a grocery store, you wait in the line. Like,
Right.
you don't go cut around. There's like just basic rules that we all kind of grow up following and conform to, let's say, but we understand there's consequences. It's so natural to us, we don't even think about it. It's just second nature, right?
Right.
But what most Americans don't understand is that that's not second nature.
No.
In most other countries in the world, they do not have a system based on the rule of law and of respect for the rule of law.
Right.
So even if there are laws, they're usually just ceremonial. They're not actually respected. And
Right.
you can navigate around it based on your social, your ethnic position, or your religious position, or whatever else. And that doesn't happen here. Everyone's equal.
Right.
And everyone has equal access to the law, equal justice under the law.
Right.
And I mean, there is the rule of law. I just think that's such a different concept. Was that hard for them to kind of understand?
We're talking about them pushing a button to cross the street and waiting for the walk and don't walk. And I'm telling
Like, just down to those basics, like,
yes,
don't get it.
legitimately.
Yeah.
Jaywalking, in Oklahoma, we have the highest fatality rate
Oh
with
gosh,
the pedestrian deaths.
because they just don't understand. And there's a reason. If you jaywalk, you will get hit, because drivers assume that
Mhm.
people are not walking when it's a green light and they're going.
The reaction is
Oh, it's just
3,000-pound
so sad.
car is not going to stop you.
No,
And
no.
they're elderly, right? We've
Yeah,
had, I
so
would
sad.
say, 8 Chaldean fatalities,
Wow.
specifically in Oklahoma,
Mm.
resulted to pedestrian.
Mm.
where
And that's
they-
just one basic thing.
Absolutely. And that's what we reiterated through, education
Yeah.
and in doing presentations. We would go to the youth and explain to them, hey,
Mm.
look, I know that grandma and grandpa and dad and mom don't speak English and they don't understand, but do us a favor, send them the message.
Mm.
Give them the one they can hear
Yeah.
from you. Because clearly we can't do a lot of
You can't go into the homes. And
No.
I mean, that's just so
it just
hard.
doesn't work.
And most refugee programs in the United States are so short.
Right.
There's so much to learn. There's no way they get
Right.
to it all. There's more Chaldeans now in the police
Yes.
force, right? So tell me what's happened. How did that come about?
So there's obviously been, a second largest, Chaldean population outside of Detroit.
So it's huge.
You have people that have been here over 10 years,
Mhm.
15 years,
Mhm.
are seeing the value of being part of the community,
Yeah.
embracing the things that the community is giving. So I've been on for 13 years this year. We have a female officer, which is
Oh, cool.
Never-
That's great, because you need that, like,
absolutely.
so that when there's a female issue that you can't,
Yeah, and the
address, you have
female
somebody
can
else.
assist with, translation or explaining to a female in domestic
Mhm.
violence cases that I'm a female too. This is not
This is not okay.
and you can't allow that to
So
happen.
huge. Yeah.
And we have 3 other male officers,
Mhm.
and obviously Chaldean as well. Both of them speak Arabic. The other one only speaks Aramaic,
Mhm.
but they're able to help
That's so
translate,
great.
give some cultural background on
Yeah.
calls that they go to. But they also have the last name, and they have the family members in their community that they know them by,
Yeah.
so they can assist on giving other
Yeah.
things that I won't be tasked with because I've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
So now I've kind of a break. I'm out there in the community, but I'm doing other things
Yeah.
so that it's not just overdrawn from.
Well, because it was exhausting, I'm sure. I mean, I remember when I first met you, all of the issues they were putting on Louie.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's like, which is great to have somebody that understands, but it can be really, it's kind of like a caregiver, and you end up being completely overwhelmed.
I picked
So-
El Cajon for that reason, though.
Yeah.
Like I could have gone to any agency. I could have
Mm.
gone to Sheriff's Department, San Diego PD. I could have gone to federal.
You wanted to stay here.
I wanted to be part of this community, and I
Yeah.
think that's who needed the help the most.
Mhm.
It's hard when you come to a country, you come to a city, and you don't have anybody you can talk
Mhm.
to, and they don't understand civil. They
Yeah.
don't understand criminal, and so they're literally. I mean,
Yeah.
you really have to dumb it down to.
Yeah.
This is a landlord-tenant issue
Mm.
where it doesn't get police involved, and the court has to help you out. This is a crime. You can't be doing stuff like that. And
Yeah.
that's something that somebody can go
So
to jail.
fascinating.
So it's little things like that where they'd be like, oh, well, we didn't know that.
Because there's no difference in their country,
Absolutely.
so they have no idea.
No.
So,
And so that's been kind of a great, grace to what's going on right now,
Yeah.
because they're understanding. And the most, I guess the most interesting part about it is females that are getting jobs,
yeah.
which is not very normal in our community. And they're
And as police officers.
absolutely. Well, I mean, think about us as a community. Majority of the breadwinners are male.
Yeah.
Right. Now we have females working, going
Mhm.
to college, getting their
Mhm.
degrees, giving back,
Mhm.
raising a family, and help supporting
Mhm.
the husband too,
Mhm.
which is phenomenal, because that's been a completely cultural shift.
Yeah.
And that's something you don't see very often. But when you do see it, it's pretty amazing. So they're assimilating, and I know think they're doing a great job on becoming better people in the community and the society. And it makes us proud to have them around, because I think of them as flowers, right? The more you water them, the more they're going to bloom. The more you don't give them any attention, then they become.
Yeah, we need to, I mean, and not ignoring different parts of the community.
Absolutely.
It's so critical. So that's why it's such a blessing what you're doing. Louie, tell me, what is it that you wish people would better understand about the Iraqi or Chaldean community? And you can separate it, or you can.
I would just say, if you don't know somebody's ethnic background, don't assume.
Yeah.
The biggest thing for me was some member in our department who's no longer with us said, "Hey, I talked to one of your cousins out there." I said, "Oh yeah, who was it?" He goes, "Oh, I don't know, some lady wearing a hijab." Right. and not to be that's not to be like, hey, like I'm not Muslim and I'm Christian, and clearly my mom would not be wearing a hijab. Why would you assume that that's who you're talking to?
Yeah,
and that's just the way it is. My biggest thing is, if you don't know, then don't say something. Don't assume or ask. Hey, better to understand you. Mm-hmm. Where are you from? Or maybe I have some knowledge that I'm basic knowledge that I can say, hey, I know that your last name is this. Are you from this specific area? Instead of saying, oh, I know you're this because that's what I know.
Right.
Huge issue, because in that completely, you get people to shut down and not talk to you. Mm-hmm. And I tell officers now that understand, if they are Chaldean, ask them what village they're from. The moment you spark that conversation, personal, they're going to lose their mind and go, hey, what do you know about villages? Because that's not normal. You wouldn't happen
you
to
would say city, not village.
Right. You would say what city you're from, but because we have different villages within our Iraqi community, you would know that the Turkey are from Rancho San Diego, and there's other ones that are within our borderline, and you would understand them even better.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, I've tried that. It worked.
Yeah.
Or just simple, saying some greeting words in Arabic or Aramaic. Shorta means police. Isaf is ambulance. So they've done a pretty good job of embracing that community and giving back. But assuming is the biggest no for me, and I think that's where I try to push. Just if you don't know, don't assume. Mm-hmm. Let them tell you a little bit about themselves. Don't think that you know because you saw it on something.
Well, this is such a diverse community, because you have Iraqis, you have Syrian refugees. I mean, those are probably the two biggest populations here. But then you also have a lot of, Native Americans from the reservations here. You have a lot of Hispanics, and then, everyone else in between. And so you could basically be assumed to be any one of those different groups. I'm sure you are.
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing that you have
a little bit of a chameleon, but
well, it's because you have a dynamic approach to all the things, right? Mm-hmm. And so where the Hispanics live, where the Chaldean community is at, and you kind of know based on demographics, and the calls that we respond to, who we're going to be responding to that.
Yeah.
So
tell me, what is it that you wish people would better understand about being a police officer? Because right now, I feel like there's so much misunderstanding and just, bias. Here you committed your life to serve in your own community when it went against everything that your community wanted you to do. I mean, you're not supposed to be a police officer. You're supposed to be a lawyer, doctor, and engineer. But you are sacrificing a lot for yourself and your family to do this so that your community can have a better life here. And so, what do you wish more people understood about being a police officer?
I think it's just to remember that this is a calling. It's not a job. Don't look at what social media puts out there, because it's easy to click that like button or dislike that, and based on the fact that you are reading something. And don't assume that whatever transpired on whatever you view, that's exactly what happened. I always tell people, can I give you a 15-second clip of a movie and tell you what's going to happen? Absolutely not. I would tell you, let me watch everything and I'll give you my perspective on it,
Mhm.
right? Just like how people give their opinions on stuff. But talk to a police officer, come on a ride along if you're able to,
Mhm.
and see what we respond to, so you're not automatically assuming this is what happened. Because if you don't know, you honestly don't have a way to, you have no standing to talk about it.
Mhm.
But if I know for a fact that person did what they did, then there's some reason behind it, right?
Mhm.
And being transparent is huge for me. I
Mhm.
always tell people on my contacts what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
Mhm.
So there's no questions.
Mhm.
Hey, look, man, I'm going to talk to you for a minute, reference a radio call that I got. If everything checks out, okay, you'll be on your way. I am going to run your name to make sure you're not wanted for something, so that we're not telling them what we're not doing. I don't know anybody out there that wants to be caught off by surprise and said, hey, what are you doing? Like, I don't know what you're going to do to me, because clearly this uniform gives you some sort of, maybe an intimidation factor, but it shouldn't be. It should talk to the person.
Mhm.
We're all human beings. When this uniform comes off, I'm just like everybody else.
Mhm.
But when it comes time to work, it's work mode. It's what we do for a living, to protect the community, keep them safe, and knowing that you can trust us. Because if you don't trust us, then we lose that.
Then we're basically in the same situation of
100%.
what your family fled from.
Absolutely.
Which is why we have a system of rule of law, system of justice, a system of law enforcement that protects that, that we as a community desperately need. So I'm just very grateful for you,
Thank you
Louie,
so
and
much.
everything you do. I'm so proud of you. And
Thank
I
you
love
so
always
much.
hearing the stories when I come back. And thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I hope this gets the message across to.
I hope so. I think people really need to hear this. I think that, we often, it's unfortunately we live in this like vacuum of news where people always like see one perspective. You start clicking blue, all you start seeing is blue. You start clicking red, all you start seeing is red. You start clicking yellow, and the reality is the world is a much more vibrant place, and we need to better understand all those different perspectives.
Absolutely.
And you do put your life at risk every time you go out there, and you do it to serve, and people need to understand that. And I mean, what you're doing in this community is amazing. And I'm sure that, I know a lot of people in your community that love you and are so thankful and just so proud of you. And they are. We know from being in the community when we have the get-togethers and stuff. So, that just shows you that this is essential, and every community across the country needs something like that too. So thank you for kind of like being the groundbreaking force here in El Cajon, but we need more Louis all over the country.
I appreciate that. It's clearly been a blessing for me. And I think I'd like to one day retire from this agency, and have a, prosperous life, but this job isn't for everybody. It takes an individual to be able to do it and continue doing it. Otherwise we're not, accomplishing anything.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
That was wonderful.